fuel starvation, off-field landing. Oh, every pilot's nightmare. We're talking with Pat Brown in the hangar.
Welcome to In the Hangar. I'm Christy Wong.
And I'm Dan Milliken, and In the Hangar is sponsored by Wingfield Aviation. If you ever need quality service with your aircraft maintenance, give them a call. Today, we've got Pat Brown from AOPA and a DPE now. Pat, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
You need a
Pat.
check ride?
I always need a check ride.
I've got an ATP check ride coming up, so.
Well, you know, that won't be me.
Yeah.
Well, Pat, I'm so glad you could come back. You've been on the show. You've talked about AOPA, but here today, you've done a ton of flying through the years. For those who don't know Pat Brown, like the three people out in the world who don't, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been flying since I was 16. And I don't know if any of you have been to the safety seminars, but I start out when I was 16 years old. I'm only 26 now, but I look this way because I'm a professional flight instructor. At any rate, no, I've been flying since I was 16. That is 51 years. And
Wow.
yeah, believe it or not.
Wait, hold on.
I started when I was 3. It's been a long time. About 10,000 hours. CFII, CFII, MEI, a seaplane instructor,
Oh, wow.
a Gold SEAL, now DPE.
Well, and when you say 10,000 hours, I mean, that's not 121 flying. It's not
No.
ATP
No,
flying.
no.
So you've done 10,000 of GA hours.
Yeah, 10,000, all piston stuff. I don't have any
All
turbine
piston.
time at all.
Wow.
Wow.
I did not know that.
And about 6,000 of those 10,000 hours are instruction given. So
Wow.
I'll tell you, they have tried to kill me in about every way that you can possibly imagine, and at least knock on aluminum, they haven't succeeded yet. So.
Okay, well, they've tried to kill you a bunch of different ways. Fuel starvation, off-field landing, doesn't sound like they're trying to kill you. It sounds like
no.
you're trying to kill you.
Now, the gods had lined up against me is actually what happened that particular day.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, I have to set it up a little bit first. So about 12 years ago or so, a friend of mine who owned a Citabria at the time was taxiing in some rather strong winds, and he got on the heel brakes a little bit too aggressively and turned it upside down. Well, it was damaged pretty severely, and so the insurance company decided that they would total it. Now, my friend, he decided that he wanted to buy the wreck back. And he said to me, why don't we buy the wreck back and we'll rebuild it? And I thought, what could go wrong there? Despite the fact, he doesn't know a hammer from a screwdriver, and I'm frankly not much better. But we thought we can rebuild this airplane, so we bought the wreck back, and it sat for a year. And then we thought, well, maybe we really should get something done about it. So we trucked it over to Brenham and had the mechanic there set it up so that we could start work on it. Well, another 6 months went by, nothing happened. So we finally told the mechanic, go ahead and let's take out the heel brakes, put in toe brakes. That'll be at least a start. So we did that. Another 3 or 4 months goes by, nothing happens. So we said, why don't you rebuild the engine? So he went ahead and rebuilt the engine for us. And another year went by, and we finally trucked it up here to Aero Countries, where there's a rag and tube guy who rebuilt it for us and really did get it back in the air. Well, this is after more thousands of dollars or aircraft monetary units than I even want to think about. But we finally got it flying. So the call came that it's time to come and pick up the airplane. So I recruited a friend of mine that has a 182, and myself and a guy that was going to be my co-pilot, because I had the most tailwheel time of anybody in the group. He was going to be my co-pilot, and the other guy flew us up to Dallas. So we landed at Aero Country. We get to the airplane. The mechanic is telling us, all right, look, I put this new wing, and I've got some ribs, and there's some stringers, and there's some this and some that, and the horizontal stabilizer is new, and oh, by the way, I flew it for a few minutes yesterday, and the gas in the left wing doesn't seem to drain as quick as the gas in the right wing, and I'm thinking, well, what high wing airplane does? So it's in one ear and right out the other. So we put the radios back in, and my buddy gets in the back seat, and we fire it up, and we do a really good pre-flight, a really good run-up. And we stayed in the traffic pattern, just circling over the field for a short period of time until we were sure that everything was working right. And we took off back to Houston. with the 182 behind us with 20 degrees of flaps. We're trying to fly some rough formation.
Hanging on the buffet.
Hanging on, yeah, I'm telling you what.
Caution wake turbulence.
Yeah, caution wake turbulence from the Citabria. So we get, everything is going fine, but I don't know how many of you out there have actually flown an airplane with a brand new engine in it, but you hear everything, everything you hear. And of course, it has a new wing, and it has a bunch of other stuff, and every creak and noise and squeak, it's like, uh-oh, uh-oh. Well, after about 45 minutes, I begin to feel a little bit more comfortable, right? And we're about halfway to Houston. We're just west of Madisonville, and the engine is just purring along, and then all of a sudden the engine goes, and it stops. And well, first of all, there's a word that comes to mind when that happens. I don't think I can say it here. You probably would bleep it out, but you know what I'm talking about. It's oh my. And so, and it's really funny, when these things happen, your mind plays tricks on you. First of all, you don't want to believe it. This is really not happening. And it takes about 10 seconds for that oh my feeling to go to, oh, this is real. We need to figure out something to do. So I started doing this on the throttle, thinking, that might work. And, well, that's not working. I look up here and there's full gas in the right-hand tank. And I look over here and the left tank is empty, bone dry. And now I'm thinking, well, he said it wasn't draining evenly, so there must have been something to that. So I remember reading an AOPA pilot some time ago that if you take the primer and pull that primer out and push it in, multiple times, if there's any gas available, it can shoot it into the cylinders. And I thought, well, maybe that'll work. So that didn't work. So I said to my buddy in the back, I said, find us an airport. And he said, there's not one anywhere close by. I said, well, I guess we're going to go in that field over there. He said, wait a minute.
What was your altitude?
2,500 feet.
You did all this? It sounds like you did 10 minutes of stuff.
Well, it felt
That
like
thing really floats.
It felt like hours. Let me tell you, it felt
This
like
is a
hours.
testament to the Citabria.
Yeah,
That thing really flies.
we were 2,500 feet. Now, by the time all this happened, we were probably at 2,000. But 2,500 feet is the last thing I remember seeing on the altimeter. So I said, find an airport for us, and he said, there's not one, and so I turned toward the field. He said, wait a minute, turn 20 degrees right, there's one over there. It was Teague Municipal, if you know where that is. It's west of Madisonville, out of 30, 40 miles. So turn over to the airport. Sure enough, there's the runway right there, and I'm looking at the runway, and the numbers are going up in the windscreen. Now, if you know anything about that, means you're going to be short. So, well, this isn't going to work. So I said, we're going to go back to the field. So we turn back to the field, and in the meantime, I key the mic, and I tell my buddy in the 182, we've lost the engine, we're going down. Master of understatement, keys the mic, and he says, we'll watch you. All right, see how this is going to go.
Well, if it was like today, he'd be saying, the GoPro's running.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we lined up on this field. There were some high tension power lines above the field, but they were the big ones. They're a couple hundred feet above the ground or whatever. So we line up and we come over a fence or something and round it out and touch down, and the grass was probably knee high, and this particular Citabria had tires on it about as big as this table. So
it's a big tire.
So they weren't quite Tundra tires, but they're not the little ones that most Citabrias come with. So we touch down, come over this little knoll here and down the other side, and I'm thinking the whole time, please, Jesus, don't let me hit a rock or a stump or something and turn this airplane back over again. We just rebuilt it. Well, somebody else just rebuilt it. We paid for it. So as we rolled over and down this knoll here, there's a fence at the end, and there was a house on the other side of the fence. Came to a stop. I even had the presence of mind to kick the rudder and turn the airplane around. Think,
that way you'll be ready to take off.
Take off the way we can. Don't know what the problem is for sure, but we'll take off the way we came. So in the meantime, my buddy had landed over at Teague, and he had found a good Samaritan that loaned us a 6-gallon jerry can full of gas. and a ladder to be able to get up over the fence and then up onto the wing. By that time, oh, and by the way, as we rolled out into a stop, of course, you can imagine my buddy and I were very quiet in the cockpit, but I realized that I'm still doing this on the throttle. We're stopped dead, and I'm still doing this on the throttle. So we get out of the airplane, they bring the gas, we put the gas in the good wing, and I said to my buddy, I said, okay, let's go. You know, we got some gas, let's go. And my buddy looks at me and he says, I don't think you need the extra weight. Folks, it's true story. You can't make this stuff up. So anyway, so I said, all right. So I climbed in the airplane and, 5-point harness and buckled it really tight. Started the engine, it's caught on the second blade, and ran it up for maybe 30 seconds or 45 seconds at full throttle to make sure I had good fuel flow. Released the brakes and back through the 2 tracks that we made when we land. See, there was thinking. So up over the little knoll there and down the other side, and then there's the ditch that I didn't see when we landed. And just as the ditch kind of fell away, the airplane sort of started to fly, and the tires hit the berm on the other side. Boom, like this, maybe 50, 60 feet in the air, I don't know.
Like slingshot.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that was one way to do it. And I'm telling you, that it was like, it just didn't want to fly. It just didn't want to fly. And finally, we got some airspeed. I got some airspeed. And
So your buddy saved your life that day.
he probably did. I owe him.
There,
I owe him.
had he
Craig,
been on that plane?
Craig, thank you.
Had he been on that plane,
Yeah, it would have been toast. So anyway, got the airplane flying and literally made a 180-degree turn and lined it up on final approach for Teague Municipal and landed. Taxied to the fuel farm where we harvested, I don't know, 2 or 3 bales of hay off the tail wheel or something like that, and put 18 gallons or whatever of gas in the good wing, and took off and flew down to Brenham and dropped the airplane off to the guy who, ironically, had done the toe brakes or the toe brakes on the airplane. And left it with him and went to the diner and had lunch. And I asked Jack, the owner of the diner, if he had any Jack Daniels. And he said, no, they don't serve that stuff. So, and the guy in the 182 joined us, and, we kind of toasted with some iced tea that we had survived this ordeal. And found out a few days later that some mud dauber had built a nest in the fuel line on that one wing. And so it was one of those things. It was just a very, very interesting experience. I learned a lot that day. I'm a glider pilot, and so when you find you don't have an engine, you really are a glider pilot.
You really
at
are
that
a
point.
glider pilot.
And as I was doing kind of a post-mortem about this, kind of laying awake that night thinking of all the things that could have gone wrong, I got to thinking, in all seriousness for just a minute, it was really, really interesting. Number one is the reaction, or the reaction time. It wasn't instantaneous. It was, what's going on here? This is just a bad dream. It's not really happening. There was a 5 or 10 seconds of denial there. So then it was, well, what are we going to do? And there was a decision process there. And what I did right was I flew the airplane. We always talk about aviate, navigate, communicate, right? And what I did right was I flew the airplane. I never thought to pick up the checklist. Never thought to pick up the checklist. Now, in the Citabria, you could say, well, look,
And
there's
like a checklist of 3 things. And
yeah, I mean, the mags are up here. You're not going to inadvertently turn those things off. There's no key. The gas was either turned on or turned off at the valve down here. That wasn't that wasn't wrong. So there's not much you can do about it. But at the same time, it was just an interesting. I don't know. It was an interesting thing to think about. That I didn't even think about the checklist. It was, let's get the airplane on the ground and get the airplane on the ground safely.
What, 2,500 feet?
There's not much.
Yeah.
That's not much room for. There isn't much room.
You wouldn't have had
time
time
for
to
that.
really go through the checklist.
No, not really. So I really don't beat myself up for that, but it's always now in the back of my mind. We talk about the impossible turn. That's one of the things that we talk about. Can you turn back to the airport? So I will tell my students, I still do a little bit of teaching on the side. I will tell my students, look, we're going to practice the impossible turn because you might need that tool in your toolbox at some point, but it's not necessarily your go-to thing. But you got to practice it because you got to be spring-loaded if you're going to do something like that. And, I wasn't prepared for this emergency. I wasn't even thinking after that initial 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, that complacency, 4 things cause accidents. And if any of you have been to my safety seminars before, you know where I'm going with this. But 4 things cause accidents. If you factor out catastrophic airframe failures or engine failures, catastrophic stuff where the airplane just falls apart, or pilot incapacitation, because statistically we know that so rarely happens that it's insignificant. If you factor those things out, you're left with arrogance, ignorance, complacency, and distractions. One or more of those 4 things are present in every single NTSB report that you read. Arrogance, ignorance, complacency, and distractions. And what happened to us? Complacency. I should have paid attention to the fact that he said that wing wasn't draining as quickly as the other one was, and not just blowing it off, because every high-wing airplane does that. It was just stupid. So, so it could have been really, really serious. If we had been over inhospitable terrain, it could have been ugly. So I'm thankful that the training kicked in, the glider training. I would tell anybody that's watching or listening, if you haven't got any glider time, go get it. You have to make it work the first time. It's not hard, but you got to make it work the first time. And in this case, we had to make it work, and we did, and we lived to tell about it and have a funny story. But it took a while to see the humor in it.
It did.
Yeah, it took a little while.
You weren't joking like this?
Not over Jack Daniels that night with my wife, no. But because she was like, oh no.
Oh, so yeah, mistake number 5, he told his wife.
Well, the reason that I told her is because I knew sooner or later
She would hear.
someone would say, didn't you lose an engine a while back? And she would say, why didn't you tell me this, dear? And I would say, I don't want you to worry. And that was just down. That was a slippery slope. I just didn't.
That was a berm that your tires were about to hit.
That was the berm.
It
Yeah.
was not going to propel you into the air.
Yeah, exactly. I just learned over the years that yes, dear, is the easiest way to get out of almost anything. Oh, and you're right, dear. So.
Is that right, Christy? Is that what Steve?
As a wife, I can confirm.
All right, good to know.
So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, those are good takeaways.
Yeah.
Complacency kills.
It does.
Well, Pat, thank you so much for coming out and sharing
You're very
your
welcome.
story with
Happy
us.
to be here.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
All right. So thank you guys for being a part of our audience today and for listening to our stories. If you like us, please hit that button, subscribe, all that stuff. And we'll see you guys next time in the hangar.